reveals himself to us through his word.
Amen.
One thing that absolutely terrifies me is someone arriving at my front or back door and for some reason needs to come in the house, and I didn't know they were coming. I get down to cleaning the house when I know someone is coming. I tend to be a clutterer, and so right now, preparing for Christmas, there's a collection of knitting projects and needles and yarn and instructions pretty much on every flat surface in my house. And while dirty dishes tend to reside happily in my deep farm sink, kind of hidden from view, things that ordinarily come into the kitchen and get put on the counter never seem to exit. Vacuuming and dusting? I can't see the point of doing it every week if the next day it's right there again. So I wait till I know someone's coming, and then do it all. And then I can enjoy a clean house for maybe 2 days. If a good definition of love is never having to say you're sorry, then a great definition of a friend is someone for whom you never have to clean the house. I don't want to be thought of as a derelict housekeeper. I mean, I can just see the satellite installer or someone going home to his wife saying, "You should have seen the house I saw today." I had been a Girl Scout for many years, but somehow I never seemed to learn the Boy Scout motto of be prepared. And yet this is exactly what's being told to us in the scriptures today. Be prepared. Paul is expecting the second coming of Christ, for Christ to return any day. He certainly expected it in his lifetime. Little did he know that almost 2 millennia later, we're still waiting. He did not expect that. And so he tells his believers that salvation is nearer to us now than when we became believers. That's like any day. He also wants the believers to make the most of every day, live honorably, so that you're ready. Jesus also gives us this message of be prepared. He tells us of the people who were going on their daily lives, eating, drinking, marrying, while Noah's building the ark. Thinking Noah was kind of crazy. What is this thing you're building on dry land? Little did they know, when the floods came, that all the people going about their daily lives would be lost. They weren't prepared. And Jesus gives us some other examples. 2 men in the field are working, and suddenly, poof, one is taken. One is left behind. 2 women are grinding grain. One is taken. One is left behind. Maybe this is the, foundation for that Left Behind series. Those books where the raptured are suddenly disappeared. Hope it's not the pilot of the plane. And then there are those who are left behind to deal with all the horrors of the apocalypse. And Jesus' third example. If you know your house is going to be broken into, don't go to sleep. Be prepared. I find it interesting that there are cults or individuals who proclaim they know the last day of earth, doomsday, second coming, whatever you want to call it. And yet, Jesus himself said, about that day and hour, no one knows. Neither the angels in heaven nor the Son of Man. Only the Father. So how can we as humans, if the angels don't know, if Jesus himself doesn't know, how can we dare to proclaim that we know? He's simply trying to make the point. Be prepared. Now, while thinking and preparing for this message today, I thought, isn't that a little self-centered? I will prepare myself. I'm going to be ready. But when you think about it, though Those who are struggling with addiction or mental health issues cannot be prepared by anyone else. That's an individual decision to be prepared to do the work that faces them. And so it's really not so self-centered. How then can we make ourselves prepared? What do we do? And it reminded me of a quote from a fellow named Henry Canby, and I don't know anything else about him. And I remember his name only because when I moved out here from South Carolina in 1999, I lived in Canby, Oregon for 8 months. But Canby was able to sum up in 4 words what St. Paul probably could never do in 4 chapters. Because Paul was not known to be concise. Canby said, "Live deep, not fast." Those 4 words, though, seem kind of antithetical to today's culture, where the themes are, stay connected, just do it. It's funny, I never felt a need to stay connected when I was growing up. My big connection was my bicycle. I took it to the library and I would ride about a mile to my friend's house and we would sit and, believe it or not, face to face talk to each other. We couldn't text, we didn't have smartphones then. But for some reason, today many people feel a need to continually stay connected, to get tweets from public personalities that they'll never meet, to read each other's blogs as if they were actually interesting, and to text continually though nothing's happening, to send silly jokes by email. Now, I do admit I use email because I never learned to really hold a pen or pencil properly. It drove the nuns crazy when I was learning penmanship. And so to write a letter, by hand is really drudgery for me. So I love email, I have to admit. But last year I attended a performance of the Nutcracker here in Longview. And on one side of me were 3 women, and in front of me was a family, a father, mother, and a little boy of about 8 or 9. And so this was before the performance. Usually, when people are talking to each other and looking at the program, seeing is there anybody they know going to be performing. But not these 5 people. They spent their entire time before the performance and during intermission with their smartphones. They didn't talk to each other. They didn't talk to the little boy, who, by the way, was knitting. He had one of those little plastic looms. And so I was sort of drawn to that. And I went, "Hey, what you making?" And so he turned around and we had a lovely conversation. But Mom and Dad were texting, I guess, or wandering around on the internet or something. And I found that really sad. Was that living deep or fast? So how do we do it? How do we live deep? How do we prepare? As I said earlier, it seemed kind of self-centered to say, I'm only going to prepare me. And yet it occurred to me that both living deep and preparing involve extending oneself to others, getting involved with others. Those 2 commandments, love God above all else and love your neighbor, are really all we need. That's all we need to do. Friday morning in the newspaper, there was an article about a woman who volunteered for 20 years at Salvation Army. Maybe you saw that picture of her. And she just said, I'm so happy feeding people on Thanksgiving Day. Those kind of endorphins last longer than the endorphins from running. You can feel good on that for quite a few days. Even putting money in a little Salvation Army bucket. You walk to your car and go, I did something good. And that is as it should be. This is why giving is so much more joyous than receiving. Extending ourselves outward. Now, there are a lot of things that we can do. You can donate a coat. You can go volunteer. You can put money somewhere for people in rescue mission or community house to have meals. And sometimes, though, there's things that just can't be done physically because we don't have the energy or the physical ability to do it. But there's one thing, low impact, can be done anywhere, anytime, by anybody. We can pray. Very shortly, we're going to go through the prayers of the people. And I think of the long list that's read every Sunday. And shouldn't we be working really hard to get that down to 0? If we all really just prayed. We can spare 10 or 15 minutes, maybe even a half an hour, turn off the TV, spare our brains a bit. You can pray while you're brushing your teeth, washing the dishes. I still have some from Thanksgiving. I happen to pray while I drive, especially down the interstate. Well, it's so lovely driving down along the river. I love that curve south of Kalama where you're almost going out into the water and then you turn. If that doesn't inspire prayer, I don't know what does. But sometimes even driving through Longview, the fall colors, snow on the branches, the new little green leaves can inspire us to pray. So, paying attention to others, helping them out, praying are the ways that we can prepare ourselves. And this message of preparation is perfect for the first Sunday of Advent. We have 24 days left till Christmas to anticipate the joy of that day. And besides preparing meals and gifts, we need to prepare our hearts and our minds. Because we're not only preparing for December 25th, we're not only preparing for the second coming of Christ, we are also preparing for the time that we meet God face to face. And as someone once said, one day your life is going to flash before your eyes. Make it worth watching. Amen.
Amen.